वेलकम बच्चों। तो आज हम लोग शुरू करने जा रहे हैं सेकंड चैप्टर ऑफ मैग्नेटिक इफेक्ट्स ऑफ करंट। सो व्हाट आर द टॉपिक्स which we are going to study here? Let's see. Here we are going to study about the Lorentz magnetic force, Fleming's left hand rule, then force on a moving charge in uniform electric and magnetic field. Some portion from this has been deleted this year. Force on a current carrying conductor in a uniform magnetic field, then force between two infinitely long parallel current carrying conductor, which will give us the definition of ampere, again very important topic. Representation of fields due to parallel currents, then torque experienced by current carrying coil in uniform magnetic field, then moving coil galvanometer, important topic. Conversion of galvanometer into ammeter and voltmeter, and difference between ammeter and voltmeter. So let's start our topic. First topic is Lorentz magnetic force. Lorentz gave the concept of force experienced by a charge in magnetic field. So according to this, a current carrying conductor, whenever placed in magnetic field, this will experience a force, which means that a moving charge in magnetic field experiences force. Basically, whenever a charged particle starts moving, it produces magnetic field around it, and whenever it is moving in case of magnetic field, then it will experience force. Similarly, the conductor carrying current also possesses number of charges moving, and if it is placed in magnetic field, then it will have tendency to experience a force that is known as Lorentz magnetic force or magnetic Lorentz force. Let's see. This is a direction of magnetic field from left to right side, and charge particle, positive charge we are assuming here, it is moving with velocity v, making angle theta with the magnetic field, and the direction of velocity will give the direction of current also. Angle is theta, so the force experienced will be in this way, plane perpendicular to the plane of magnetic field and velocity. So magnetic Lorentz force is given by q times of v vector cross b vector. We can expand it as qvb sine theta. N cap is there because force is a vector quantity. Theta is angle between velocity and magnetic field. If we have a negative charge, it will be having force in reverse direction because direction of current will be reverse. So force will be in downward direction. So some important concept related to this we have. If charge particle is at rest, then velocity will be zero, and if velocity is zero, no magnetic field will be produced by the charge particle's motion, and hence magnetic force will be zero. So whenever there is a stationary charge in magnetic field, it never experiences any force. Another condition, if the charge particle is moving parallel to the field or anti-parallel, this is 180 degree. If charge moves parallel or anti-parallel to the direction of field, then also the magnetic force is zero because the value of sine 0 and sine 180 is 0. Then another condition, if the charge particle is moving perpendicular to the field, then in that case the force acting on it will be maximum because sine theta, sine 90 will be maximum. So maximum value of force will be qvb. It is in the direction of it is basically in the form of magnitude. So you can note down it if required. So the direction of force which we have represented here, that how we will find. For this we have Fleming's left hand rule, which will be used to find the direction of magnetic force. For this we have to use our left hand, and in left hand we have to use thumb, forefinger or first finger, and central finger mutually perpendicular to each other, such that central finger is giving the direction of current and first finger is giving the direction of magnetic field, and they are perpendicular to each other. So the thumb will give the direction of force, which is perpendicular to magnetic field as well as perpendicular to direction of current. So all the three are in perpendicular direction, mutual perpendicular they are. So according to the rule, if central finger, four or first finger and thumb of our left hand stretched mutually perpendicular to each other such that central finger points the current and forefinger points the magnetic field, then thumb will give the direction of motion, or we can say direction of force acting on the current carrying conductor or also on the moving charge. So the important concept is here we can remember the concept in the form of EMF, in the form of electric current, E for electric current, M for magnetic field and F for force in anti-clockwise direction of the fingers of left hand. Means if we move from central finger to thumb in this way, EMF if we apply, we can easily remember which finger is representing what. Then force on a moving charge in uniform magnetic and electric field both. If both the fields are present, then in electric field we already know that electric field exert force EQ on the charge. Along with that magnetic force, it will be added up, and hence when a charge Q is moving with velocity v in region in which both electric and magnetic field exist, then the total magnetic force, then the total force, Lorentz force, which is the sum of electric force QE and magnetic force Q into V vector cross B vector. So Q is taken outside as common and the remaining expression is this. This is the force experienced by a charged particle in electric as well as in magnetic field. So you can note it down if required. Now another important topic, force on a current carrying conductor in a uniform magnetic field. Whenever there is a magnetic field, see this is the magnetic field. In this a conductor is placed having length L and it is making angle theta with the direction of magnetic field. This is the small portion and this is the electron moving with velocity Vt, drift velocity we know this. So current will be in opposite to the direction of motion and force will be acting in this way. Again Fleming's left hand rule is acting on this. So force experienced by each electron in the conductor. This is the force experienced by a single electron where F is equals to Q into V vector cross B vector. So in place of Q we have placed negative charge of electron minus E. In place of V we have used drift velocity and B vector is as usual. So if N we consider as the number density of electrons and A is the area of cross section and then the number of electrons in the element dl will be what? It will be number density into volume. So cross section area into length will be the volume. Multiplying it with, we will get the total force on green portion, on the dl portion. The experienced force experienced by electrons in dl is df, which is n into a into dl, number of electrons we have multiplied, then multiplied with this expression, and it will be NeAVD. We know this NeAVD is acting as current, so it is written as I into dl vector cross B vector. I is NeAVD and negative sign represents that the direction of dl is opposite to that of velocity. And to find the total, we have integrated the expression, so it will be used for limits 0 to L total length. So in place of dl we will have L, so L minus 0 will be L, and hence we have I into L vector cross B vector. This is L, which means length of the conductor. This one, this is length. Don't confuse with I and L. So we have used the symbol L, or in general it is ILB sine theta after opening this, or BIL sine theta. So this is L, or we can write it like this also. So in this way we can use it, the expression easily, If the angle is if angle theta between length and magnetic field is 90 degree, if theta is 90 degree, then in that case we know this, that the angle theta 90 will produce sin 90 as 1, and hence the force expression will be the simple form, which can be written as BIL. To remember this, we can pronounce it as a Bill. Bill is the magnetic force on a wire of length L carrying current I placed in magnetic field, and this should be perpendicular to the direction of magnetic field. So this is the expression for magnetic force. So you can note down this if required. Let's move to next topic. Now we will discuss about forces between two parallel infinitely long current carrying conductors. Suppose this is a conductor PQ carrying current I1, another conductor RS carrying current I2, and they are separated by distance R. Now we know that this first conductor will produce magnetic field on second. Similarly, second will also produce magnetic field on first, and right now we have discussed that whenever in magnetic field a current carrying conductor is placed, force acts on it. So the same case we have to use magnetic field on second conductor due to first will be in downward direction according to right hand thumb rule we have used. Similarly, force will be acting according to Fleming's left hand rule, force on 2 due to 1 F21. So magnetic field on RS due to current in PQ, it will be downward B1, and its expression is mu naught I upon 2 pi R. This is the expression for magnetic field due to an infinitely long wire. This is in magnitude. Direction is downward, we have shown in the figure. Force acting on the RS due to current I2 in it is Bill, or Bill sine theta. Theta is 90. So it is B1. This one is B1, but current is of second conductor I2, and this part we have used as length. So sin 90 becomes 1, or expression will become mu naught I1 I2 L by 2 pi R. So B1, it's perpendicular and into the plane of the diagram. So by right hand thumb rule, so angle between I and B1 is 90 degree. That's why we have taken this, and this is the expression which we have taken as length of the conductor. Now the magnetic field due to second conductor RS on conductor PQ will be outward B2. So force will be in this direction F12, force on 1 due to 2. So magnetic field on PQ due to RS, this is reverse. In reverse we are finding the expression. So magnetic field due to the second conductor will be mu naught I2 upon 2 pi A. This is in magnitude. And force acting on the PQ due to current I1 through it is force again Bill, where this time it is B2, current I1, and general length we are taking as L. Angle is 90 again because of the direction. So it will become this expression. So here we have this as L, angle is again 90 degree merging out. So we can see this, the general force F is mu naught I1 I2 L upon 2 pi A, whatever we are using. And because the length is of the infinite conductor, so we don't have the exact value, so we can adjust this L in denominator with force. So we will get force per unit of length of the conductor is F by L, and F by L is mu naught I1 I2 upon 2 pi A. This is Newton per meter, and this force will help us to define the SI unit of current, that is ampere. So moving to that, before that you can note down this if required. So let's see. Here we have two conductors. Another important concept before moving to the definition, this is the important concept that whenever two parallel wires carrying current in same direction, they have tendency to attract each other, and if they have a direction of current opposite, then they have tendency to repel each other. This is the general method that if direction of current is opposite to each other with respect to each other, then they have tendency to repel each other. Here they are repelling because of opposite direction of current. And if they are having same direction, if direction of current in the two parallel wires is same, then they have tendency to attract each other. In this way we can remember the concept that same direction of current is giving attractive force between two parallel wires, and opposite direction of current is giving repulsive force. So let's move to next definition of ampere. Force per unit length of the conductor we have already calculated. Force per unit length, so force per unit length F by L is mu naught I1 I2 upon 2 pi A Newton per meter. Now if we consider the current I1 and I2 as 1 ampere and distance between the two conductor is 1 meter, then this force will come to be 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter in this expression. Putting the values, we will get the result 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter. So hence we can define the current 1 ampere of current as 1 ampere is the current which, when flows between two parallel conductors separated by unit distance, can exert a force of 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter between them. So 1 ampere is that current which, if passed in each of the two parallel conductors of infinite length and placed 1 meter apart in vacuum, this is important, causes each conductor to experience a force of 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per meter of length of the conductor. So now the representation of field due to parallel current. In this way we can represent. This is the concept of representing magnetic field with the help of right hand thumb rule. We are using it. Torque experienced by a current loop, rectangular loop, in a uniform magnetic field, that we will discuss now. So here we have taken a rectangular coil PQRS of length L and breadth B. So area will be L into B, and this is the direction of magnetic field. The plane of the coil is making angle theta with the direction of magnetic field, and current is passing in P to Q to R to S to P in anti-clockwise, we can say. Now the force on the portion SP will be in upward direction according to Fleming's left hand rule. Similarly on this part it is downward, and here they are acting with same value in opposite direction, and their line of action is also same, so they will cancel each other because their line of action is same, so they will not produce any torque on these sides. So now let's discuss with the remaining sides. Remaining sides means the sides P and Q. So P and Q is giving, first of all we are considering, let theta be the angle between the plane of the loop and the direction of the magnetic field. The axis of the coil is perpendicular to the magnetic field. FSP is I into B vector cross B vector. Then FQR will be this. And now the forces SP and QR which we were discussing, that they are equal in magnitude, opposite in direction, so they cancel each other. Also they are acting along the same line of action, hence they do not produce any torque. Now the direction of force on this side PQ and RS, on this PQ it will be outward, and on this side it is inward. This is again according to Fleming's left hand rule. You can set your Fleming's left hand rule to find the direction of F of PQ and F of RS, and then F of PQ value is I into L cross B, or because angle is 90, so it will be BIL. Similarly FRS is also BIL. Now these forces FPQ and RS also in opposite direction and equal magnitude, so they will cancel each other and do not produce any linear motion. They are not having tendency to produce any linear or translational motion, but they are acting along different line of action. So they have tendency to exert torque on the coil. So the effect of these two forces, FRS and FPQ, they will produce torque. How? Let's discuss. Moving to the next portion. See, this is the plane of the coil again. This is axis, this is magnetic field, and angle theta. This is width B, and this side force PQ, this side force inward direction RS. So they are going to produce torque. So formula for torque, this torque experienced by the coil is force into perpendicular distance. Force we are taking PQ. So perpendicular distance PN we are taking here. So formula of FPQ is BIL. We have already taken. PN is B cos theta. This we have taken. Cos theta in the triangle PSN, and hence we get B cos theta value. So now combining L and B, if we are combining L and B, then it becomes area. So IAB cos theta, A is L into B. So N turns are there if in the coil. If coil is having number of turns N, then N will be multiplied with the expression of force experienced by a single coil. And this is another important concept, that if we have the plane of the magnetic field, this we have drawn normal to the plane of the coil. This n cap is the direction plane normal to the plane of the coil. That means area vector we can say, and it is making angle phi with the direction of magnetic field. So clearly we can say phi plus theta is 90. So theta plus phi is 90. So theta can be written as theta can be written as 90 minus phi. Phi is the angle between the normal to the coil and magnetic field, direction of magnetic field. Then theta plus phi is 90. So theta will be 90 minus phi. So IAB cos 90 minus phi means sin phi, and hence NIAB. N is for number of turns, and in place of NIAB, if we write it as BINA, it will be easy to remember. Bina, name, in the form of this name Bina. We can remember the formula for torque. So the expression for torque on a coil carrying current I, B magnetic field, N number of turns, and A area is Bina sin phi. So this is important, that very important while applying the formula, that in terms of cos or sine. So because whatever the angle is given, according to that we have to use the formula. It will be either Bina sin phi or Bina cos theta. Theta is used when angle between magnetic field and plane of the coil is given, and Bina sin phi is used when angle between magnetic field and normal to the plane of the coil is given. So moving to the next topic, torque in vector form, we have already discussed this. Tau is Bina sin phi. N cap will be the unit vector normal to the plane of the coil, and in this way sin phi A and B, it will be giving AB sin phi will be A vector cross B vector, or combining the expression of I and A, we have this concept that current into area, this is called magnetic dipole moment. So M is Ia, magnetic dipole moment. So we can write in this way also. The coil will rotate in anti-clockwise direction from top view according to the figure. About the axis of the coil shown by the dotted line, and that we have already shown. You can go to the figure and check that. The torque acts in the upward direction along the dotted line according to Maxwell's screw rule. If phi is 0, then tau will be 0. And if phi is 90, then tau is considered to be maximum as Bina. Magnetic field in Tesla, current in ampere, area in meter square and tau is in Newton meter. Units are there, so the formula can be used to find the value of torque, and it doesn't depend on the shape of the loop. So if you have written this, we can move to the next part. Now the moving coil or suspended coil, or also we can call this as D'Arsenal type galvanometer. Here the moving coil galvanometer, the simple galvanometer we have used in potentiometer, meter bridge, Wheatstone bridge, also the same thing we are going to discuss, its working. And the concept is based on the same concept which we have already studied, that whenever a current carrying coil is placed in magnetic field, then torque acts on it, it gives deflection, and galvanometer is working on deflection method. So here we have two magnetic poles, north and south, giving magnetic field in this way, north to south. And here we have a rectangular coil suspended in magnetic field. Terminals are there. There is a hair spring also and a mirror also. So connection is there. When we close the key, current is start passing, current is moving, coming down, passing through the coil, and now this current passing through the coil in magnetic field, that will have tendency to produce torque on the coil, and on the two sides of the coil forces are acting, and these forces have tendency to rotate the coil. So torque experienced by the coil is NIAB sin phi or Bina sin phi, restoring torque in the coil. Due to this, whenever the coil is rotating here, the coil will rotate in this way, and due to this, the spring will acquire restoring torque. So restoring torque in the coil will be K alpha, where K we are considering as restoring torque per unit twist. Alpha is the twist or angular twist in the wire. At equilibrium, when equilibrium condition is reached, then it will be the situation when both the coils are both the torques are balancing each other. So we have taken BINA sin phi equals to K alpha, or I equals to K upon BAN sin phi alpha. The factor sin phi can be eliminated by choosing radial magnetic field. Here the term radial magnetic field we are using is a magnetic field which will produce sin phi as 90 degree, phi as 90 degrees, so sin phi will be 1. This will have tendency to produce maximum torque. So in making moving coil galvanometer, we always uses radial magnetic field. So how radial magnetic field is produced, let's see. In case of radial magnetic field, we have this situation, that the magnetic poles are in the form of curve. This is the top view, in which plane of the coil PQRS lies along the magnetic field lines of the force, in which position of the coil comes to rest in equilibrium, and the angle between the plane of the coil and the magnetic field is 0. So the angle between the normal to the plane of the coil and magnetic field will be 90 always. So sin phi will be sin 90, that means 1, and formula will be this. So here I is equals to K upon NBA, or we can write it as BAN ban alpha. So I is equals to G alpha. Here G is called galvanometer constant. The mirror is used to give the reading in this way, like we have a lamp which will produce light on the mirror, and it will be reflected on the scale in this way. The moment the coil deviates from its position, this mirror will also deviate, and hence will give the reading in this way. So now the current sensitivity of the galvanometer, how sensitive it is towards the current. It is defined as the deflection produced in the galvanometer per unit current. That means alpha upon I, which can be written as BAN upon K, bank. Voltage sensitivity will be deflection. It is actually deflection. Deflection produced, again deflection produced per unit voltage. So alpha is equal alpha upon V, that means BAN upon KR. This is the expression for current sensitivity and voltage sensitivity. You can note down if required. Conversion of galvanometer to ammeter. We have to convert galvanometer into ammeter. So for this, what we are going to solve here, basically first of all we should know that ammeter is a low resistance device. So to convert galvanometer into ammeter, we reduces the resistance of the galvanometer by connecting a low resistance wire S, which is called shunt. And because it is called shunt, so it is always connected in parallel, because the meaning of the shunt is connection in parallel. So low resistance wire is connected in parallel with the galvanometer, and due to this, galvanometer can be converted into ammeter by shunting it with a very small resistance. So here we have used shunt resistance as current is passing through the galvanometer. The portion in the dotted box is the entire ammeter, from which Ig is the maximum allowable current passing through the galvanometer. So the remaining current is bypassing through the shunt. This is the advantage of shunt, that it protects the galvanometer also from heavy currents. So potential difference across the galvanometer and shunt are equal because they are in parallel combination. And voltage is voltage across shunt and voltage across galvanometer. Voltage across shunt is this Vs. Voltage across galvanometer is Vg, and formula for voltage is IR, that we have already discussed in Ohm's law. So using the formula, I in shunt is I minus Ig, I in galvanometer is Ig, and G is the resistance of the galvanometer. So formula for shunt will be Ig into G, or we can say Rg upon I minus Ig. So conversion of galvanometer to voltmeter, again the same way. Voltmeter is a high resistance device, reverts to that of ammeter. So here we have used a high resistance wire, that is R, connected in series with the galvanometer. Ig is the current passing through it. So potential difference across the given load is the sum of potential difference across galvanometer and potential difference across the high resistance. So it will be I of G plus R. This is because G is the resistance of the galvanometer and R is the high resistance connected in series. So total resistance is R plus G multiplied by Ig. So R can be written as V upon Ig minus G. So this is basically the conversion formula for galvanometer into ammeter or voltmeter. Now the comparison between ammeter and voltmeter, let's discuss this. So the difference between the ammeter and voltmeter is, the ammeter is a low resistance device while the voltmeter is a high resistance device. Resistance total is because of parallel combination, product upon some formula we have used. Here is because of series combination, total resistance is this. So shunt resistance formula is IgG upon I minus Ig, and here series resistance required is V upon Ig minus G. The shunt resistance used is very small, while the resistance used to convert galvanometer into ammeter is high. Series ammeter is always connected in series because current remains same in series combination. Hence, to find the total current, it is to be connected in series only in the circuit, while galvanometer is to be connected in parallel combination. Voltmeter is to be connected in parallel combination. So resistance of the ideal ammeter is considered to be 0, while similarly for ideal voltmeter it is infinite. Resistance is less than the galvanometer for ammeter, while in voltmeter it is greater than the voltmeter. It is greater than the that of the galvanometer. Resistance of this is actually not voltmeter, it is galvanometer. The resistance is greater than that of the galvanometer. It is not possible to decrease the range of the given ammeter. We cannot decrease the range below a certain value, while it is possible to decrease the range of the given voltmeter. So these are basic comparison between ammeter and voltmeter for the sake of your knowledge. And with this, we have completed this chapter also. So if required, you can note down these points, and The second chapter is also completed now. So enough for today's class. We will meet in next class with the concepts of last and third chapter of the unit 3. So till then, take care. Goodbye.